Good evening. This is going to be episode 5, reading the Anarchist Handbook, organized by Michael Malice. 10 minutes at a time, stopping where we stop and wrapping it back up. So this is a continuation of chapter 3. This is Max Stirner, From the Ego and His Own, 1844. And we're going to kick off on page 17. We were in the midst of reading this essay. If you remain on the ground of right, you remain in rectibri. The other cannot give you your right. He cannot mete out right to you. He who has might has right. If you have not the former, neither have you the latter. Is this wisdom so hard to attain? Just look at the mighty and their doings. We are talking here only of China and Japan, of course. Just try it once, you Chinese and Japanese, to make them out in the wrong and learn by experience how they throw you into jail. Only do not confuse with this the, quote, well-meaning counsels, which in China and Japan are permitted, because they do not hinder the mighty one, but possibly help him on. For him who should want to make them out in the wrong, there would stand open only one way thereto, that of might. If he deprives them of their might, then he has really made them out in the wrong. Deprive them of their right, in any other case, he can do nothing but clench his little fist in his pocket, or fall a victim as an obtrusive fool. In short, if you Chinese or Japanese did not ask after right, and in particular, if you did not ask after the rights, quote, that were born with you, then you would not need to ask at all after the well-earned rights either. You start back in fright before others, because you think you see beside them the ghost of right, which, as in the Homeric combats, seems to fight as a goddess at their side, helping them. What do? Do you throw the spear? No. You creep around to gain the spook over to yourselves, that it may fight on your side. You woo for the ghost's favor. Another would simply ask thus, do I will what my opponent wills? No. Now then, there may fight for him 1,000 devils or gods. I go at him all the same. The, quote, Commonwealth of Right, as the Westliche Zeitung, among others, stands for it, asks that office holders be removable only by the judge, not by the administration. Vain illusion. If it were settled by law that an office holder who is once seen drunken shall lose his office, then the judges would have to condemn him on the word of the witnesses. In short, the lawgiver would only have to state precisely all the possible grounds which entail the loss of office, however laughable they might be. That is, he who laughs in his superiors' faces, who does not go to church every Sunday, who does not take the communion every 4 weeks, who runs in debt, who has disreputable associates, who shows no determination, etc., shall be removed. These things the lawgiver might take it into his head to prescribe for a court of honor. Then the judge would solely have to investigate whether the accused had, quote, become guilty of those, quote, offenses, and on presentation of the proof, pronounce sentence of removal against him in the name of the law. The judge is lost when he ceases to be mechanical, when he, quote, is forsaken by the rules of evidence. Then he no longer has anything but an opinion like everybody else. And if he decides according to this opinion, his action is no longer an official action. As judge, he must decide only according to the law. Commend me rather to the old French parliaments, which wanted to examine for themselves what was to be matters of right, and to register it only after their own approval. They at least judged according to a right of their own, and were not willing to give themselves up to be machines of the lawgiver, although as judges they must, to be sure, become their own machines. It is said that the punishment is the criminal's right, but impurity is just as much his right. If his undertaking succeeds, it serves him right, and if it does not succeed, it likewise serves him right. You make your bed and lie in it. If someone goes foolhardily into danger and perishes in them, we are apt to say it serves him right. He would have it so. But if he conquered the dangers, if his might was victorious, then he would be in the right too. If a child plays with a knife and gets cut, it is served right. But if it doesn't get cut, it is served right too. Hence, right befalls the criminal, doubtless when Hence, right befalls the criminal, doubtless, when he suffers what he risked. Why? What did he risk it for? Since he knew the possible consequences. But the punishment that we decree against him is only our right, not his. Our right reacts against his, and he is in the wrong at last, because we get the upper hand. But what is right? What is matter of right in a society? Oh, brutal. I need to start this over. I apologize. It's a cold reading. My eyes are bad. The light's bad. It's a challenge. But what is right? What is matter of right in a society is voiced too in the law. Whatever the law may be, it must be respected by the loyal citizen. Thus, the law-abiding mind of Old England is eulogized. To this, that Euripidean sentiment, Orestes 4:18, entirely corresponds, quote, we serve the gods, whatever the gods are. Law as such, God as such, thus far we are today. People are at pains to distinguish law from arbitrary orders, from an ordinance. The former comes from a duly entitled authority. But a law over human action, parentheses, ethical law, state law, etc., is always a declaration of will, and so an order. Yes, even if I myself gave myself the law, it would yet be only my ordit, to which in the next moment I can refuse obedience. One may well enough declare what he will put up with, and so deprecate the opposite of the law, making known that in the contrary case, he will treat the transgressor as his enemy. But no one has any business to command my actions, to say what course I shall pursue and set up a code to govern it. I must put up with it that he treats me as his enemy, but never that he makes free with me as his creature. and that he makes his reason, or even unreason, my plumb line. States last only so long as there is a ruling will, and this ruling will is looked upon as tantamount to the own will. The Lord's will is law. What do your laws amount to if no one obeys them? What your orders if nobody lets himself be ordered? The state cannot forbear the claim to determine the individual's will, to speculate and count on this. For the state, it is indispensable that nobody have an own will. If one hand, the state would have to exclude, lock up, banish, etc. This one. If all had, they would do away with the state. The state is not thinkable without lordship and servitude, subjection. For the state must will to be the lord of all that it embraces, and this will is called the will of the state. And that's a good place to stop on page 19. Page 19. Episode 5 ends on page 19. A lot of density in this, especially when you're reading it cold.